Did you download the chart for your Thanksgiving dinner today, Joe?
Well, I was actually happy with it because it showed a guy sitting by himself in the living room. So that's basically my spot.
I was gonna say, is that your plan?
What do you have, all vegetables?
It's not my plan, it's how it happens. I'm more than happy to move that to the outside as well. A chart on Thanksgiving, my word. What are we, pretty amazing.
Where we are these days.
Yeah.
So what are you cooking, Joe?
Well, I probably will cook. I'm cooking a turkey because, and no one will eat it
Right.
but me because of the.
That's what you say every year.
And I do eat it every year.
I can't believe you still cook a whole turkey.
Yeah.
Are you going to stuff it?
Yes.
Good.
That, and I suspect, please?
Do you make your own stuffing or do you use that bag stuff from the supermarket?
Oh, my own stuffing. Yeah. And I'll have a lot of Brussels sprouts. I got one son that seems like that's all he eats, Brussels sprouts.
Well, they're good if they're
But it's you know, they stink up the house, of course.
I like them practically burnt. I like them like, yeah.
Yeah. They got to be boiled and roasted.
I slice them like
you're cooking
slivers.
for too long.
Yeah, I like them roasted. Yeah.
I like them in other people's houses.
I'm with you.
That's a nice way to do it. Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
Oysters. Oysters can
Yes.
stay at other people's houses too.
All right, well, it's 4:30, so we might as well get started. Joe, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm going to be brief today. I hope. We start out with the numbers. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to the press conference today, and the numbers, the local numbers have been delayed. I just checked them 5 minutes ago, and we're still looking at last week's numbers for Newport and the rest of the localities. I note that generally the numbers that were reported yesterday statewide, that hospitalizations were reported as 135. There's a chart on the far right that iterates where, at least relatively, where you were, where the state was as a whole week to week, and that's somewhat instructive, but I would have liked to have talked about, I'm very interested in the local numbers because of last week's increase, slight increase, I should say. I also would note for you on the numbers, there was a, to the extent you can consider any of this decent press, there was an article that Tom Shevlin sent me today that contrasted Narragansett with Newport. Narragansett's numbers of, far exceed ours, and Newport, we're in the lower spectrum of numbers, and it, of course, attributed to college students, but or the influx of college students. But remarkably, we haven't had that issue with regard to Salve Regina University. They've done a very nice job. So that's my report on the numbers. I'm sure someone is probably checking them as we speak, and if we have anything local that to report, just shout out, and you can educate us all. But hopefully they'll be out sometime today. But I don't know the reason why they're late. I missed the press conference, and so I think Jamie, you indicated that the governor simply indicated that the numbers were late. So I don't have anything else to add on that topic.
Joe, do they specify when you get the numbers for hospitalization, location or county or anything like that? Or
The number, a running number as as to hospitalization locally, and last week it was 17. Not 17 currently, but that was the running total of hospitalizations. You can, there's a chart, you can contrast the running numbers with all the other communities.
Yeah, I guess my understanding is it's more important, the number of hospitalizations as opposed to the number tested or the number that even have it, but.
Yes, that's correct. The vulnerable population is the largest concern, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Joe, the the thing that I note, and it concerns me, is that you get the numbers from the website, and then you read the little stories in the daily news in which they tell you, oh, by the way, we added 180 from last week, and it significantly impacts what the numbers that reported last week looked like. And like today, I think the article says that the positivity rate of first-time tested people was like 17.6% or something.
Yeah,
I think there's something going on in the background there, which, to quote Donald Trump, you can drive up your cases by driving up your testing, but you can also you can make your positivity rate look better by getting a whole bunch of people that aren't susceptible to it to take the test, and when in fact there may be something more complicated going on. And I look at the numbers, and we're not where we were 6 weeks ago, or we're almost 3 times what we were 3 weeks ago. Not Newport, but the state. We're going in the wrong direction, as she said. But I didn't see her getting as excited today as I thought she might have.
But Justin, that's exactly why I asked the question about hospitalization, because I keep hearing it, and it just, I guess it kind of complicates things for some people, but for most of the doctors and health officials, they seem to rely more on the number of hospitalizations than actual testing and that sort of thing.
And depending upon how you look at it, as she pointed out today, the 19 to 24-year-olds constitute 9% of the population, but they're constituting 21% of the positives. But generally, the younger people, they don't end up in the hospital.
Right.
But they could give it to their grandmother, who would.
Yep.
So it's still, the underlying problem is it's floating around out there, and those of us who are, locked in our houses aren't going to get it. But it's, it isn't going away anytime soon. As I said to somebody today, there's no event horizon coming up where it's just going to go away. I don't see that event horizon, and it's going to be a long winter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's what everyone is predicting nationally, and certainly the governor's predicting that, and it makes sense. And you look at the base chart in which they talk about the tests, and they compare the prior day's test with the prior day's number of cases of positive. There really isn't a good correlation there, because those, as Justin indicated, those results flow in. They're elastic. They're not all set in stone in one day. And so unless you have your finger, I didn't see that larger figure that you mentioned, Justin, on the positivity rate, but I haven't been able to decipher from the chart how you cull out the first time positives versus the rate of the previous day.
I don't
you have to take it over.
I don't either, but it's in today's daily news, and they've been pretty good about giving little stories about it, and they provide this data, and I don't know where it's coming from. But it is interesting. Just as a curiosity, in this audience today, has anybody had a COVID test?
Yeah, I have.
Pardon?
Yeah, I did in late May.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. Joe put his hands up. Jamie, Chris, and Susan. Okay. Now I can say I know somebody that took the test, but actually that wasn't true.
Oh, I know people that have taken the test.
But the governor seemed to stress the holidays coming up, and that's the main worry, I think, that she showed during her press conference today, is we're all going to be inside. We have to follow certain protocols, and I think that it was a big morning for the holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you gotta hope people listen to it because, I mean, I feel like Lynn was saying, you know, we're at like a tipping point almost in terms of things could get a lot worse if people forget everything with the holidays.
Stay
Yeah,
local.
I would agree. And it's almost not that it's a tipping point. I mean, look at, for all of us, the fatigue, the COVID fatigue has set in. I mean, it's not setting in, it's set in.
It's set in.
But you have to, you just have to be resolute and realize, take this for what it is, and that is, it ain't over. It's still out there. There are people that are at risk. Some of us are not at risk. But if we have it and we pass it along to someone at risk, it could be a big problem for that person. And that's the most important thing to keep in mind and be careful. I mean, I'm glad we've done what we've done, but doesn't mean that things couldn't turn around tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Folks, I apologize that I'm not on video. And so I've had my hand raised for a little while. Shall I just jump in?
Go ahead, Susan.
Thanks. On this question of heading into the winter, I think it would be fantastic if the council could do something that just encourages people to be able to spend more time outside. Like for Thanksgiving, we're looking at an oyster barbecue, which could be a first course to get together with some friends outside, and then we'll go inside for a much smaller dinner. But I was talking with Joe about the idea of allowing fire pits outside. I gather that there are issues with that, but I would love to see some way that the city could encourage people to do social gatherings outdoors in their gardens still into the colder months.
Do we not allow fire pits?
Open fires are not permitted, and we have an uptick in complaints about it.
I guess it depends on how, because my understanding of it is like those like little chimeneas.
Yeah, no, they're not allowed, but if you're cooking, that you can cook
Right.
on open fire, but you can't have just an open fire and sit by it. Because I've dealt with that a lot with people in the second ward.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm thinking about a marshmallow roast kind of thing, you know. It's like if you're sitting around the thing, if you're not having a bonfire in the back, that's not encouraged. But you know, a little source of warmth that would roast a marshmallow could be a pleasant thing. That's for after the oysters.
I think most of the city, our houses are very close together.
Mm-hmm.
It's the smoke that people complain about mostly. But you know, it's going to be cold and people are going to have their windows closed. So I don't know. But as long as you're cooking, I think you're okay.
Okay.
Shall I continue?
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
The second issue is a bit good news. Lower Broadway will be closed off to traffic this Sunday between 11 and 6. Amanda Gallagher was the chief organizer of kind of a little outdoor bringing some retail outdoors. Has just great job organizing a few retail merchants on Lower Broadway, and has applied to the city to close off Lower Broadway. All the merchants appear to be on board, and paperwork is in order. She has done a very nice job in organizing putting it together quickly, and it's a good plan. And the various city departments, police, fire, we all endorse it. And since the council was not going to get able to vet this because of we don't have another meeting for another week, I have exercised my authority and said this was okay. I hope it's okay with the council as a special event, and we'll try it out and see what happens. But it's very well put together, and I think everyone will be happy with it. It's only a few hours.
She's only
So
asking,
what's the time?
11 to 6?
11 to 6. Okay.
Yes.
she's only asking for one,
I'm sorry?
she's only asking for 1 day.
Yeah, for now. We'll see how it goes. And then we'd be able to put something together for next Wednesday, most likely, to get it on the
I
docket.
remember
if she
it.
wants it.
That's what she was proposing was, let's try it for this one Sunday and then see how it goes and then be able to, if it goes well and there's no complaints or issues, just continue to replicate it.
The only issue that's going to change is the retail merchants will be able to push out. There's only a few of them. I'll include Mel's Cafe out there as well. But the rest of the restaurants will keep their same footprint and their same service area that they're using now. So it'll be looks to me like a very low-key, walkable event that we can all check out and enjoy.
Joe, would they permit it to have a band or two?
Well, that wasn't proposed,
Okay.
but I wouldn't have an objection to that.
And are we?
I think that
Go ahead, Jamie.
I was gonna say, if we did something like that, we would have to be really careful and aware of the social distancing, and
Yeah,
not let it become too crammed.
Yeah, the way they've set it up, notwithstanding the suggestion, is they've got safety tables. I think they've asked our masked volunteers perhaps participate, and but she's done a nice job in terms of where the volunteers and the safety tables. So I think they've got it down pretty well. I was actually impressed how quickly they were able to put this together, because as of Monday, when I came into the work Monday, I didn't think it was going to be I was going to suggest it be held for another week, but the package came together pretty quickly. Yeah, so
Okay,
that's good news.
thank you.
Will we need any police details or anything like that, or is that going to just be taken care of?
They're they're assigned. You'll have one at each entrance, if you will.
And
Are we paying for that or are we charging them?
They're paying for that.
Well, can I pipe up here? I would love to see the city pick up some of that cost. It does feel like this is an opportunity for the merchants to, enhance
Well, they
their
didn't.
position.
They didn't ask, so I didn't know. So I understand.
Well, I'm hopeful that it's a raving success for them, and I hope that our businesses are going to find a chance to recoup some of what they've suffered. And I would encourage, if anyone is listening, I would encourage merchants from other parts of the city to look closely at this model and consider putting in applications themselves. And when it comes to that, I would be supportive of the city reducing the cost of the police detail to do these deals.
I think if we can, then we should. It's just, we gotta make sure if we can.
That actually, maybe that flows into, some of you have a resolution on next week's docket, and I sent it to Joe and asked him to, look at some of the issues here. This is something that's being done to help businesses. Could the cost of the detail police be actually absorbed by COVID money?
Yeah.
That's the $64 question as to what can be absorbed by COVID money, or what can't be. I actually have I don't think, in this case, there is a definition of what can be absorbed. In this instance, it's got to be substantially related to combating the pandemic. That's at least the Treasury regulation. I got the language somewhere because I was looking at that right before, but quite frankly, it's worth throwing it in there, quite frankly, to see whether if we were to get FEMA would not cover it, because there's two avenues reimbursement for, your pandemic costs. You've got FEMA, which only reimburses 75%, so you eat 25%, and they keep narrowing down the categories of reimbursement. And indeed, the information we're getting is that FEMA is not only rejecting a lot of cost submissions, but there's going to be a long delay before you actually will get a response or indeed get reimbursed. On the other hand, the $1.25 billion that's been allocated to the state via the CRF, the Virus Relief Fund, that money can be used for a much broader category of reimbursement related to the pandemic, and indeed used for 100% of your costs. Or in the alternative, it can be used to pick up the 25% delta that FEMA otherwise doesn't reimburse a municipality on. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it next week, but the city has incurred roughly $275,000 in additional costs, mostly personnel and materials. We think that FEMA in the long run would pick up the personnel, but it looks like they're starting to shun any type of material costs, PPE, hand sanitizer, cleaning costs, and things like that. And as I told you, on the other hand, the relief fund that the governor has not parted any funds with under under the guise that she has to see how things flatten out with her own budget and her own, or the state's own efforts vis-a-vis the pandemic. No money's been released, and we're only one of 3 states that hasn't received any direct allocation in that regard. And the resolution next week is what we target, and we hope is a resolution actually suggested by the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns that addresses that issue, and that is having the state of Rhode Island loosen up the purse strings on some of that $1.25 billion that they're using, but they're not using it. They could use it a little more aggressively to help out the local governments. So that in and of itself, it's a two-headed monster. We need the money. It creates a budget problem for us if we don't get the money, and the long haul money, the delayed money from FEMA, even if we do get reimbursed, I don't expect it to happen during the course of this fiscal year. In addition to that, what we'll talk about next week, which is part of this whole problem relating to the pandemic, is that the state has withheld certain state aid reimbursements. And because you're aware, there isn't a FY21 budget. The funds have been withheld, and I'm going to quote from one of the PowerPoints that we received. They've been withheld because of significant efforts have been made to conserve and redirect resources to fund the COVID-19 response. And this latter part is a little more serious, and ensure continued financial and operation stability of the state. One example I wanted to just present to you is that in previous years, by July 31st, we received a pilot allocation of $1,509,000 approximately. Currently, we are only being allocated, because of the lack of a budget, 1/12 of that amount. So to date, we've only received approximately $400,000 of the pilot money that we usually get in a lump sum, as I indicated, $1.5 million. And that goes across the board. That goes to the state aid to education formula as well. We're hoping the governor completely funds that as was promised for the FY21 budget. But if you recall at budget time, we had a discussion as to the increased amount that the difference between the 21 and the 20 figures. And I think it was about $400,000. And I had a discussion with the superintendent about that today, and she's going to be getting us some more information. So yeah, we're going to talk about that again next Wednesday, but I want to get some of this on the table. And by the way, I just want to tell you that the meals and beverage tax, we have the same issue because the payments are lagging behind on that. So the reality of all this is we need help with the COVID money. The uncertainty of the state budget is might bite us after the election at some time. We've got to have a state budget at some time because they're going to start the discussions for the next budget year, probably in January. And but they're still forecasting a significant deficit in that regard for FY21. So there's a lot to stay tuned on this. But the resolution next week is to free up COVID money and to maybe just to try to convince, along with all the other municipalities, that try to keep us flush with the state aid to local governments, not only on our side of the ledger, but on the school side of the ledger as well.
If I may jump in, as a Brookings economist pointed out last night, if there isn't a second stimulus package, there are going to be massive layoffs in government.
That's exactly right.
Throughout the United States. What she's trying to really do, I think, is save money so that she doesn't have to, she eventually may have to lay off state workers, but she's trying to avoid doing that as long as possible. But if they don't get another stimulus package, we are going to have some really difficult times next year.
But also, I just want to build on that just for a second, because the trickle down effect of that, we're at the bottom, with the bottom rung of the ladder in that regard. So her saving in a dramatic way by tapping into some of our traditional aid relief from the state is going to have a dramatic effect on us. In addition to, we think we're doing pretty well on the food and beverage, but I'm a little concerned that our figures are 2 months off in terms of money coming in from the state on the food and beverage, to use an example. So there's a lot of, I think we all talked about at budget time that there's a lot of stay tuned here, in that, the January, February, maybe early March is really the time that we have to take a hard look at ourselves as a government. And hopefully not. Hopefully we're going to avoid it. But I think we're going to have a real interesting discussion at that time.
Joe, can I just, since I don't think we're raising our hands anymore, but I just want to say, I'm glad we're being so transparent about this. I would also caution council members when they talk about picking up certain expenses. You're right about the meals and beverage tax. I just attended a meeting with Discover Newport. We know the real picture of what's going on will be felt December, January, February. Our numbers were good last year, but we are really way off since they did this shutdown. So I would caution council members before they talk about city maybe picking up this expense or that expense. You're right, we're at the bottom of the ladder. The League of Cities and Towns recognize that, and all the managers and mayors talk about it. They haven't gotten a dime from the state at this point. I just think we have to be careful. I love the idea, though, of shutting down the street, having the marketplace. I think that's a great idea. I think it will be very positive for the businesses there.
I think it's the kind of thing where, like I was saying, if we can do it, we should. We just have to be aware of what we can and can't do in terms of the finances, because
but I don't think we know what we can and can't do. Yeah.
That's a valid point. But I also wanted to ask Joe on another topic, if everyone's okay moving on, about just City Hall as we move forward. I get questions from people all the time about when City Hall will be more open. And, you know, I think that with the numbers maybe creeping back up, we're probably better off staying appointment only, but I do get questions from people a lot on that. And then I also got, you know, how questions about, I wonder how early voting is going in terms of people coming, so many people coming into City Hall, and how we're doing with keeping people separated and everything with
Sure. I mean, on City Hall, we were progressing. I did actually an employee survey just to get the, you know, just to let the employees weigh in and what they thought about it. And, you know, we had a very good response. We had a discussion about it today. And I think what we'd like to do, and we are trending towards it opening, and, you know, the numbers do kind of bother us in terms of the thought process. But I think what we would like to do is at least get through the election, because we have a lot of people in and out of the basement here. And it is a little bit tight. The spacing, it's going, I would describe it as okay. People are very respectful. The room is a little bit tight down there, but they're doing a nice job just controlling who goes in and who goes out, and how, you know, how many people are in the room. So what I've noticed, I know that the very first day, there was 184 early voters. I was one of them. It was a very good experience. I stood outside here, and it only took, you know, 10 or 15 minutes to get in the you know, single file. I noticed every day that usually in the morning between 9 and 11, there's a good crowd that extends out to the steps out here. And then by the afternoon, like, you know, just before this meeting, I would say from at least 2 o'clock on, there wasn't anyone going in there. I don't know what the number is, but I think it's probably averages around that 200, 184 a day since the start. And that's not bad, you know, considering how deep we're into the early voting. And I had meant to ask that question today about the numbers, but I think it's going pretty well, and there haven't been any issues with regard to it. And I got to admit, I want to, you know, compliment the residents of the city of Newport and how respectful they are with this whole thing. And that's going on throughout the whole summer too. And I think that's why we are where we are, at least with our COVID numbers.
Joe, What's Up Newport provides numbers. So as of yesterday, it was 990 had done early voting.
Okay, all right, it's not bad.
And another 550 mail ballots had been received. I don't know, so it's yeah, it's good.
Not bad. You know, I would have expected to be a little, maybe a tad bit more. I compared it to, you know, I think Middletown's had about that number. So on you know, per capita, they're a little higher, but yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I wanted to just, if I could, just digress. There was a press release that just came out about the numbers, and I'll read it to you. It's very short about the delay. It doesn't really answer any questions for anyone. We are behind in posting our COVID-19 data today because the result dates for the tests submitted from one laboratory need to be adjusted. Our number of new positive cases is 284. 10,880 people were tested, resulting in 2.6 positivity rate. And there we go with that same number, Justin, we're not continually very psyched about. There were 5 new COVID-19 associated fatalities, and there are 130 people with COVID-19 currently hospitalized. The full data set will be posted later today. And it's later today, I guess, probably early this evening, unless someone can look it up real quick. I don't think there's anything done yet. Actually, I can look it up real quick.
Joe, I think it would be if they told us the age frame or age bracket of.
Well, that's there. There's a demographic. There's a demographic chart there. Okay. If you go, and it has not been updated, but if you go to the RIDO data page, data hub, there's a demographic page that'll tell you, you know, statewide what the COVID demographic is. And it was just 19 to 24, has continually been the highest category, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the 30 to 39, it seems to cruise pretty well as well. Yeah. Like if I have the categories correct.
Newport number is still.
Yeah, and 192. Yeah. So I will.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Lynn?
I was just going to ask you another question. Go ahead. Finish what you were going to say.
I'll shoot everyone an email tonight when I get the local number. I'd love to see it now, but whatever.
What's going on with the Take It Outside grant? Have there been quite a few applicants?
Take It Outside grant, we have about, I think, 35 to 40 businesses that are interested in a myriad of things. And the process has been very, slightly cumbersome in terms of some paperwork. We tried to repurpose some of our funds to a reimbursement process as opposed to a hard good purchase. And we just got the grant agreement recodified today, but it took us over a week to do that. So we plan on executing the Take It Outside grant tomorrow, as well as there's a vendor form that has to be filled out in which the money flows into our coffers. So it's going to, so our Take It Outside assistance will consist of reimbursement as well as some hard goods that we have been able to procure in bulk with the town of Middletown and the Chamber of Commerce. Those are heat lamps. So we have a kind of a stock of heat lamps and then reimbursement. And we're still seeing whether we can afford some, one of the marine tradesmen has offered to make some fire retardant tents that pass code, and they need to be ordered in bulk. So we're working with Middletown and the Chamber of Commerce to see whether we can afford, with what we have, a purchase of some of those tents that some merchants have asked for. So we've got a list of about 35 to 40, and they've specified what they need. And we've looped back to a few of them. Some few of them obviously, have already initiated the expense. So we would expect from those ones that have initiated the expense that are on our list that could be entitled to reimbursement to produce receipts and invoices, and then we will take a look at those invoices and do the best we can with the allocation that we have, the $75,000 allocation that we have.
Joe, have we gotten any phase 2 money or any feedback on phase 2?
No, not at all.
Okay.
They haven't even paid out the phase 1 money yet, so that's the big complaint. The grant agreements are just hitting people's desks now. As I said, I literally got the grant agreement 2:30 today. And so you have to, it's the bureaucracy demands that you have to sign the grant agreement. You have to fill out the vendor form with all your banking information, since the money's going to be transmitted electronically. And that paperwork just hit today.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, this morning we had a telephone conference with the town of Middletown, Chamber of Commerce. Trish Reynolds was on the phone, Sean Brown, Ron Molansky from Middletown, Aaron Donovan, and we were a little bit chagrined that things weren't better developed by this time. I mean, by the time, so I think the theme this morning was, hey, by the time we get this thing organized, it's going to be January, and ain't no one going to want to go outside. And so the assistance is going to fall flat on its face. But what these grant agreements are showed up to the Chamber of Commerce in terms of what they're able to do today. Our grant agreement showed up today, so we're off and running. So I can say this afternoon, as of 2:30, 3 o'clock, that we're satisfied with at least the bureaucracy of it, that it's going to move along now properly in the fashion that we wish it to move forward, so that it can provide some assistance to businesses, either partial assistance or or with the hard goods that we have, that stock is we're supposed to get a delivery of, I think, 15 heat lamps tomorrow, that we're going to reach out to the people that were interested in the heat lamps and say, you can come by and pick one or two up. So that's where we are.
Joe, I would suggest that you maybe give a call to Discover Newport. I know they ordered insulated blankets for the restaurants throughout the city.
Yeah, and then they did that for Restaurant Week, which is November 6th, I think November 6th onward.
Well, they're going to have more blankets than they, then.
Yeah, they are. I think 50,000 of them. It's a whole lot of blankets. Wow.
I know.
So that's all I have today. I'm more than happy to provide more information if I wasn't clear. And as I said, I will get the local number to you this evening. Hopefully it's 0.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Is there anything else then from anybody? All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Ciao.